And I appreciate this guy joining us, Farhan Lalji from TSN, and appreciate the time, Farhan. Hey, I get it. This is how other players win Player of the Week in the CFL. Nathan Rourke needs to get hurt. That's the only other way that it can happen, sir.
Yeah, it certainly seems that way. I think he's won it, 5 out of 8 weeks and then got the injury. So, it's certainly, if you're a BC Lions fan, you're now seeing how the other half lives, right? Because it shows you the importance of the quarterback position, because when you look at that BC Lions team, their receiving core 1 through 5, I felt was the best in the league for some time. You look at the offensive line, which I thought was going to get exposed without him, actually held up really well. Their defense has been great all season. Their kickers have been good. Their coverage teams have been horrendous. But ultimately, you need the quarterback to make it work. And they find out that without the quarterback, it doesn't work. So, you don't want to completely throw the baby out with the bathwater with a guy like Michael O'Connor. It was a tough first half. But, I still think that you got to reserve judgment and give him a little more runway, and hopefully he's available in a couple of weeks. But that team looks a whole lot different without Nathan Rourke.
Well, I'll tell you what, I was around the Flames the day after Johnny Gaudreau signed in Columbus, and it was like a funeral. I wonder, has it been like that around the Lions with the Nathan Rourke injury discovery? And do you know if he will be back ahead of schedule? What did that do to the team?
Well, the first week it didn't do much, to be truthful. I mean, I think they still believe they're a very good team. I think Michael O'Connor looked very good in practice. And, the vibe around that team was remarkably good. When you lose your best player, your MVP, I thought, okay, they're going to feel this. But I was at 2 practices that week, and their energy was off the charts. Now, how is it this week? Well, we don't know. They're on a bye, but now you've seen life without Nathan Rourke. And, that might be a cold, hard dose of reality at that point. So we'll see what it looks like when they begin practice again on Sunday. But as far as Nathan's injury is concerned, I know that the surgery went extremely well. Nothing happened in the surgery that could set him back. But the truth is that even with it going really well, it was still going to be a long shot for him to return. There were pins and plates put into the foot. They're going to wait and see in the next couple of weeks when they go in and take another look again as to what the real issues are at that point, and just kind of assess the recovery at that point. They won't really know until then, but look, it's going to be a real long shot for him to make it back this season.
I'm going to get in a viewer question for you before I ask you NFL, because I'd like to get to the NFL with you. But Don, a friend of ours from the Navy, Canadian Navy, says, does the CFL, Farhan, have a plan if their NCAA player pipeline is squeezed shut due to the XFL and USFL success?
I'm not sure that it's ever going to be squeezed shut. And there's a lot of football players out there, and I don't think both those leagues are going to survive, right? A lot of Canadians are willing to dismiss them both. I'm not. I do think the XFL is going to survive. I'm not going to suggest that all of a sudden it's going to rival the NFL, but it could be, as I've said before, MLS level successful. And, the CFL is going to have to compete with that. But I think there are good players out there. I think the league is established. That helps it. Hopefully they can get into a position where they can, pay a little bit more down the road. And certainly certain players are able to get more than whatever the XFL is going to give. And the one thing about CFL players is that they don't really become good until they've been in this league for a while in most cases, whereas you're not going to get that level of sustainability in the XFL. People are going to be in and out of that league quick if they don't make it to the NFL, right? The big thing with the CFL right now, and I think the league is feeling it, and they don't want to admit it, is the quarterback problem. And it's a problem, Rod. You've got Zach Caleros and Nathan Rourke, and now maybe Jake Mayer. And after that, there's a whole lot of average in this league right now. Like it or not, I know a lot of Saskatchewan fans won't like hearing that, but it's the truth. And it's the truth league-wide. So they've got to get quality quarterbacks in the front door, and they've got to commit to developing them, because what the Lions did this year is extremely rare. Yes, Nathan's the unicorn, but at some point, an organization had to sit back and say, we're going to risk something by developing and playing a young player and not just bring in retread after retread after retread, because we've got to win today. They've got to make some decisions as a league, and they've got to make every effort. And that's a collective, because you've got teams that have 10 quarterbacks apiece on their neg list. They're trying to stash these guys. That needs to stop. The best players need to be available to all the teams at that position to get into this league, because that's going to determine the success.
Well, I'm loving your analysis today. By the way, Terry Carrier in the chat says, wow, even this Rider fan loves that bomber helmet over your shoulder. That's a beaut, Farhan.
No, that's a University
do you want to tell him?
Huskies helmet.
I was going to say, do you want to tell him, or should I?
It's a University of Washington Huskies helmet. I'm a U.S. college football guy. That's the College Football National Championship, Stanford shirt. I'm a college football guy. I love the CFL and the NFL. Don't get me wrong, but when people ask me their favorite, I go off the board and say U.S. college football.
I'll come back to that CFL quarterback carousel thing for the current guys in the league and how you think it shakes out. But what is your take on the unfortunate Chris Streveler situation the last 24, 48 hours?
Yeah, look, when it comes to quarterbacks in the NFL, decisions are made, right? There's very few quarterback battles, and that's just the way it is. I look at what's happened in places like Seattle and Pittsburgh and Carolina and other places, and you knew what was going to happen going in the front door with those quarterback positions. And when they pay a lot, they're going to play a lot, and that's just the way it is. So certainly they've made their decision with Zach Wilson. They've invested. That's the way it's going to be. They've got their veteran backup in Joe Flacco. That's the way it's going to be. Teams de-emphasize preseason more and more every year. They're down to 3 games. The starters play less and less. So it was a great story. Do I think Chris Streveler, based on his performance, should get an opportunity somewhere in the NFL? Sure, but don't look at that 3-game sample size and think he should start, or all of a sudden that should happen for him. I hope for Chris's sake that he finds another landing spot, and I think he will, and somehow or another manufacture his 6th game so he can eventually get an NFL pension. But I will tell you this: at some point, he's going to be back in this league. Like that's just going to happen. This may have bought him a year. It may have gotten him his 6 games. But at some point, he's going to be back in this league. And those 3 preseason games are going to change the narrative in the CFL for Chris Streveler big time, because the majority of educated CFL fans have said, look, he was a backup, right? I don't know that he can take a CFL team over and be a franchise guy at all, right? Like, it doesn't matter that he's floated around the NFL for a couple years. But those 3 games will change that narrative. And when he comes to the CFL, he's going to be paid like a starter, and he's going to get a team that invests in him seriously.
Lapo has always said that he could be a pure passer. I didn't believe him. I had to see it, but he did it. And by the way, you've covered enough Super Bowls in NFL. Oh, would he ever? But here, the viewers were talking about the harshness of the NFL and how unfair it is what's happening to Streveler and stuff. That's all true. But I've been covering the NFL now for a year. Went to Super Bowl. You were there. The Dolphins game here Saturday night. They're so happy. What I sense about NFL people, they're so appreciative of being in the NFL. Yeah, it's a harsh reality and it's cold, but they sure seem to love it. People have been very nice. I'm sure you've experienced the same thing.
So are you talking about players or fans now?
Players, media, staff. No, the people that work in the NFL.
Yeah, you know what? It's a great league to cover. I enjoy it, and I've got nothing negative to say about the players or people associated with the teams I've covered. Certainly, never really enjoyed covering Bill Belichick, but that's an obvious one. But look, I will say this, and this is not to toot my Canadian horn or anything like that, but there is not a better league to cover than the CFL. That includes the National Hockey League. And the reason for that is these players are not entitled. They're one of us. They're part of the community. They're exceptional athletes, and they appreciate the coverage. So for me, the CFL is the best league to cover from that standpoint. But the NFL, compared to other American leagues, is by far the best. Like, if you give me the choice between covering the NFL, Major League Baseball, and NBA, and I've done all 3, the NFL is head and shoulders above on every level, including the reasons you outlined, just the people to deal with and just how happy they are, right? Baseball players are a nightmare. Star basketball players, incredibly difficult. NFL players, awesome.
Yeah, absolutely. Rich in Edmonton, this is the last one. He says, Farhan, will JT Miller be a Canuck at this time next year? Can I just tail that into an overall Canucks outlook as we move into the training camp here?
Yeah, I don't think so. I think there's going to have to be an end to this at some point. And from the Canucks, you don't want to see it end via free agency. I don't think they're going to get a deal done. I fully expect them to be there when training camp opens and play the majority of the season. And then, if all of a sudden this team's in a playoff spot, I don't know that they move on from him and they risk doing what Calgary did with Johnny Gaudreau, that you just walk him to the aisle and eventually he leaves, right? So I just don't think they can afford to pay him, knowing the other contracts that are due. The previous regime left this team in such a tough cap situation. You've got Elias Pedersen in another year. You got Bo Horvat this offseason as well. They've got contracts due, and they can't keep them all. So I think eventually JT Miller's going to go one way or the other. And as far as the team is concerned, I think this forward group that they've assembled, if you include JT Miller as a part of it, I think it's a pretty good group, right? I think it's a playoff-worthy group, and I think they've got playoff-worthy goaltending. Defensively, you got Quinn Hughes and maybe Oliver Ekman-Larsson and Tyler Myers, and you're kind of holding your breath a little bit after that, right? And even guys like Ekman Larson and Hughes are probably playing one pairing above. Sorry, not Hughes. Ekman Larson and Myers are probably playing one pairing above where they should be, based on what the underlying numbers would indicate they're best served. So, can they outscore a really ordinary defense? It's going to be tough, right? Because the one thing that defense showed last year, other than Quinn Hughes, was an inability to transition the puck up the ice and get it to the forward. So we'll see what it looks like. But, like I said, I like the forwards. I like the goaltending. And I like the top two defensemen.
Well, this goes far too fast every time. Farhan, thanks for the time, man. Keep up the great work. Enjoying it from down here, man. Hope to see you this fall.
All right, buddy. And I will be at the NFL season opener in Los Angeles. I know you're enjoying life in Florida, so we'll catch up soon.
Thanks, pal. The great Farhan Lalji from TSN. Hey, everybody. Thanks for watching the RP Show on YouTube. And don't forget, we're live daily on YouTube from noon to 2 Eastern. If you like what you see, hit subscribe. And if you like the program, check around for other segments of The Rod Pedersen Show here on YouTube.